Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. All right. We get ready for the fall semester. Tomorrow, I'm going to be heading to another campus here in the Maricopa colleges to go pick up a badge and to sign some onboarding papers and all of that. It made me think about what I've done right this past semester, what I've done wrong, and some goals in the coming semester over at this is Glendale College that I'll be teaching at. My first thought is I still have a lot to work on with my eating slash drug habits. So as you guys know, I was off of caffeine for 4 months, and I've had pretty good luck with returning to caffeine in moderation. I would have just stopped using the caffeine altogether, except that I found that it was contributing to me having good attention span. And I kind of got away with it during those 4 months because at my work, I was working with things that were really up my alley. I don't have the luxury next month. I hate to go into detail there, but let's just say that my concentration and attention, I kind of got away with not having that last semester, and I don't have that luxury anymore. But at the same time, during the time I was off of the caffeine, I was sleeping a whole lot better. I had steady hands, and so it's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's really with a heavy heart that I go back. Actually, think of caffeine as a very important medication, but with good side effects, right? That you have to take, and the potential for addiction as well, right? Just kind of think of caffeine like that. That's how it behaves in my life, at least. There is one other big goal that I have to think very hard about. You see, ever since coming here to Phoenix College, I've been very stingy with helping my colleagues, in large part because at my previous jobs, I was too loose about it, and I came to hold a lot of resentment toward a lot of my colleagues. I had one colleague when I was in Washington Technology University in Seattle. She had some issues with she had a family member with long COVID and had to take care of some of her extended family members. And then last year at a tutoring center here in Phoenix, I had a couple colleagues who had children and stuff like that, and I often filled in for that. Often with significant effort, right? So, for example, when I was working at the tutoring center, one thing I really hated was any sort of schedule with gaps in it because the tutoring center was in a part of town that I had no business being in. It's not like if I have a 2 hour gap in between students, I could go to my favorite restaurant next door or go home or no, it was nowhere near any of that stuff, right? There wasn't a good place for me to set up my art gear either, and I couldn't do it. It was just a complete loss. And I often took those schedules because I wanted to be like a team member, and oftentimes it didn't reciprocate, right? Other times I had other things that were near and dear to me, and people didn't relate. So, for example, back at Washington Tech, I helped my colleague, and I was at the time I was programming an AI for the game of Ticket to Ride Poland. And one day I asked her, "Would you like to play a couple rounds?" Because I didn't have anybody to play with, right? And she just got really busy and said, "I'll do it later." And long story short, I worked with her for another 6 months after that. She never played a game with me. Not that she was trying to offend or anything. She probably just doesn't think it was a very important thing, right? It's kind of like it, if you ask somebody to, I don't know, hold the door for you, and they don't think it's a very big deal, right? She probably just kind of wrote it off, right? But at the same time, I've been very stingy with a lot of my colleagues. Sometimes somebody asked me to fill in at a certain hour, even when it was really convenient for me to do so, I said no anyway, because I didn't want it to escalate. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to feel good as a result of that. I just had a colleague who asked me if I could fill in. Like it was right next to my schedule, Like there were no gaps or anything. I was perfectly available. Instead, I went home and so I had nothing good to do anyway, and so I just don't feel any peace ever since I've kind of made it a hard policy to always say no, and I don't feel any peace or happiness in my life anymore as a result of that. And I want to change that. I want to judiciously say yes, but at the same time make sure to ask for return favors as well. That's going to be the hard one for me. Last video I talked about how I've been wanting to leave Phoenix, but you know what? Since I'm going to be here until the end of this year anyway, I want to make the best of it, make new connections. Um, One of my biggest weaknesses with my art projects is making the connections. I've been making a lot of art, but I haven't always gotten the best price for it, in large part because of lack of connections, right? I also want to I want to manage my time better. I noticed that so for example, today I wanted to see about making connections with art. I look at this next meetup group and it's on Friday, and unfortunately, I also want to go to there's this other board game meetup I was at last week, and I really did well with one of the girls at the meetup. Her dad was there, and usually it doesn't go well when I meet her dad, but I didn't see any disapproval there, and so I don't want to miss that either. And unfortunately, ever since I began my art career, time has been a big uh, 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 constraint for me. You see, I haven't been traveling a lot. I used to go on at least one international trip every year or every 2 years at least, either to my family in Taiwan. I used to have a computer Olympiad conference once a year, and sometimes I would also take a side trip from there. Right, the Olympiad conference was often in Amsterdam, and then I would take a side trip to Poland. I haven't been able to do any of that ever since my art career, and which is one big reason I want to leave the Phoenix area. Here in Phoenix, we drive long distances just to go to work, go to a meetup. I have a funny story about the commutes. My first week here in Phoenix, this was back in 2021, actually, before I permanently moved here. I was looking for a board game meetup. I put it into my GPS, and my GPS barked out, drive 15 miles and then turn right or something like that. And I couldn't believe my eyes. On the map, it didn't look like it would be 15 miles. It looked like it was only a couple of intersections away because the exits are so far from each other. I was so upset by the 15 miles that I started to sing the Erie Canal song. 15 miles on it wasn't 15 miles on the Erie Canal anymore. It was 15 miles on the mega highway, and I kept singing that the whole time I was driving there. And I'll free up a lot of time if I didn't have to do that, right? Unfortunately, I've been very constrained by time, right? When I was living in Seattle, I was constrained by money, the cost of living there, right? And here in Phoenix, money isn't so much of a problem, but the time constraint is, right? But given that I'm doing better financially while I'm in Phoenix, right? I might as well use this as an opportunity to hoard as much bismuth as I can, and maybe some palladium now that the prices are down, so that when I move somewhere else, I'll have a good running start there, right? So what do we have here? Uh, Continue to improve my food and drug intake. Um, say yes a little bit more, but do it judiciously, right? Make some connections, some time management, and hoarding some bismuth and palladium, especially now because Trump might get reelected, and who knows what kind of tariffs he's going to impose. Bismuth and palladium both come from China, so who knows what kind of tariffs he's going to impose there. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.